So the narrative in the mainstream media and being pushed by the current government is taking a big switch. When I'm not talking about immigration, the only thing they want to talk about is far right. They are desperate to talk about the far right and to label everyone and anyone as far right. Migration as an issue, and it is an issue, a massive issue, is being avoided, deliberately so. The reason for this is that the issue of migration is something that people can get behind and attack the government on. And the government has no leg to stand on when it comes to this. People have voted in election after election, and a lot of it has been based on cutting immigration, which hasn't happened. So the will of the people is not being respected, but it is something they want. The government doesn't want you to talk about this. They want you to be on the defensive. They want you to be justifying why you're not far right, why you're not a racist because you want to look after your own people first. They want you on the defensive, they want you on the back foot, they want you to be thinking that potentially you might be getting tarred with a brush and you might be the one that's in the wrong here, so you need to justify your position. You don't need to justify your position. You're 100% right to want to put your people first in their own homelands. What the government is doing is trying to gaslight you. They're trying to deflect and they're trying to defend. Don't let them do it. The thing is, with immigration, it is the cause of multiple problems in this country. Now, the government know this, but it suits them so they don't address it. Let's take something like housing, for example. If we were to cut immigration, we would still have the same amount of houses, but we would have less people to fill them. So how do you sell those products when there are more of the products than the people? You drop the price because you want to get yours sold. So the price of houses would come down. The need for more houses would drop. More people could get onto the property ladder. It would just require us to stop immigration. That's a win for our people. But it's not in the government's interests, so we don't do it. Jobs. Now, this is a tough time financially for many, many people, let's put it that way. Wages do not match inflation rates at all. Wages have stagnated for the working class. The problem is, if you have an employer who thinks he can get in someone to do a job cheaper than what an expected wage is, that's potentially what he's going to do if that's an option. Now, if you bring in people from Eastern Europe or Africa or wherever in the world, they potentially may work for less than what a British worker will. And it's not a case of, oh, they'll do jobs that the British people just won't do. No, they'll do jobs for less than a British worker needs to be paid to support a family and to pay for a house. We need well-paying jobs in this country because it costs us a fortune to live here. If you cut immigration, suddenly that labour pool dries up. Then there becomes more jobs than there are people looking for jobs. And if you want to employ those people, you need to outbid the next company. You need to offer more. The wages and any sort of extra remuneration that comes in, it needs to be more than what someone else is offering. Otherwise, you're not going to get that space filled. There is not a shortage of workers for the jobs. There's a shortage of decent wages being paid for the jobs. And this could be sorted without immigration. The NHS is often held up as something that absolutely 100% requires immigration, otherwise it will collapse. And it's nonsense. The number of overseas workers in the NHS roughly matches the percentage of the population that's foreign born in the UK. If you got rid of them, if you cut immigration, you're going to lose the same amount in the NHS in terms of workers. So we're no further back, no further forward. The big difference is you're going to free up a lot of resources. You're also not going to need to spend millions upon millions of pounds every year on interpreters for people who cannot speak English. So the NHS wouldn't collapse without immigration. It would probably thrive. Also, instead of telling our children that we don't need them for the NHS, we need immigrants, We could tell our children, we need you for the NHS, we need you for our care sector. We could incentivise them, we could train them, we could make it a real positive career. Why don't we? The environment is another hot topic at the minute. The big thing being pushed is that we need to cut our CO2 emissions. That is apparently the big driver of climate change, whatever that may be. Now, the easiest way to cut the amount of CO2 that's being emitted in this country is to stop immigration, because that is the major driver of our population growth. If you stop letting more and more and more people in, we don't need to burn as many fossil fuels. Also, I live in Scotland. When it gets to winter time here, we need to put the heating on a lot because it's cold. But see, when it gets to 12, 13 degrees, the heating goes off because we need to save money and we can bear with it. But people from Africa, they can't. They have to keep the heating running. They have to wear great big coats and things because they're not used to the conditions here. So having them here is just going to cause more and more CO2 emissions. Now, if that is the big driver, if that is the thing you need to cut, then cutting immigration cuts CO2. Crime is another huge issue in this country. If you look at things like the grooming gangs, cutting immigration gets rid of that problem. Okay, yes, we have our own people here who are horrendous human beings, and we have to deal with that. And absolutely, they should be punished with the full force of the law. Some of the crimes committed by our people are absolutely horrific. Jimmy Savile always gets brought up, and rightly so. More should have been done. However, if we cut immigration, we could get rid of so many of the problems, crime-wise, in this country. Just because our people commit the crimes doesn't mean to say we have to import people from all over the world who do the same thing. This would also free up places in our prisons. It would free up things like the parole system and the court system. It's a no-brainer. It's an absolute no-brainer. When you look at the per capita figures for crimes committed, you find that there's a huge problem with migrants and crime. You just have to be honest about it. And what is a better society to live in? One where 3 girls are stabbed by a Rwandan man who's come over here with his parents, or a society where he didn't come over here and they're still alive. If you were to offer people a time machine to go back in time and stop this man's parents getting immigration here, people would do it. Of course you would, because you know what's going to happen. You know he's going to go on and kill these girls, so why would you not do something to stop it? Well, why are we taking the risk with any of them? What benefit is it to us to let these people in and hope that they don't go and do this? Again, it's a no-brainer. Cut immigration, you'll cut crime. So basically, the government doesn't want you talking about this because immigration is not just a problem that results in these poor little girls getting stabbed. It is a problem that affects so many areas in this country. The government doesn't want you talking about it because the government doesn't want your lives to be better. They don't want you on the housing ladder. They don't want you to be healthy in the NHS and getting looked after. They don't really care about preserving the environment, not building houses over every green space we've got. They're not interested if your wages are so low that you struggle to heat your homes in the winter. They're not interested in any of this stuff because they don't care about you. They don't care. What we need and what we need to push is for a referendum on immigration, a binding referendum on immigration, so that we can decide who comes into this country and who doesn't. This is our homeland. We should absolutely get the choice on who comes here and who we don't want. And if we are putting ourselves first, if we're looking at this from a point of view of what benefits us, then so be it. There's nothing wrong with that. Any other country is allowed to do this. Outside of Europe, they're all allowed to do this, and they're encouraged to do it, to put themselves first, to put their people first. Well, it's time we did the same. It's time we put our own people first. It's time we demanded an immigration referendum, a binding referendum. Let the people decide. If this is democracy, let the people choose.